G'day fellas, and welcome to my China guide. In this video, we're going to be talking about everything you need to know for China. I've done a little bit of preparation for this, but for the majority of it, it's just going to be on the fly. For anybody who doesn't know, I am a China main. I love this civilization. It's all I've played for the last year for Age of Empires 4. I finished Conqueror last season with China. I don't think I was that high. I think like maybe Conqueror 2. I don't think I actually hit Conqueror 3 with it. But this season, I'm actually going to try and play a lot more than what I did last season. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the primary strategies that you're going to be going for as China. We're going to be talking about the unit compositions that you're going to be going for. We're going to be looking at the matchups for China. We're going to be talking about map-specific strategies as well that you're going to be implementing in your ranked games. We're going to be talking about base building for China. We're going to be talking about the micro. We're going to be talking about individual build orders, and then we're going to be talking about the intricacies of the civilization, things like mass villager migration and farm placement. So let's get into it. Let's start by talking about some of the strategies and what they are and what kind of purpose that they serve. Now, I'm going to assume for the purpose of this video is that you've got a basic understanding when it comes to China and the way that it works. You know what their bonuses do. You know what their unique units are. You know how their dynasty system works. If you don't, get in the game, give it a try, see how you like it. If you like it, well, you probably will because it's a pretty sick civ. But it is a difficult civilization. You can see at the top 3 difficulty. So the first strategy, and now I've already released a video for this. It was the previous video where I did a build order guide for it. It's 1 TC Song Dynasty. So basically what that means, you start off with your main town center and you go straight into Song Dynasty. And this is a very powerful strategy for taking down enemies that are looking to do early expansions. So it's good against civilizations that, you know, typically want to try and get down more town centers. If you don't want to match their town centers, if you want to play it, you know, a little, maybe if you want to climb the ladder a bit faster. So typically what that's going to mean is that you're going to be going into Zhukunu from the archery range, and then you might be looking to supplement it just a little bit with spearmans, push with +1 ranged attack from the blacksmith, and then also look to get some siege engineering action in as well. So that's the first strategy. The second strategy is 2 TC Song, and this is a more economic focused build order. And there's a lot that you can do with 2 TC Song. So what that means is that you're going for a second town center and you're also going for Song Dynasty. So normally we go for Song Dynasty first and then add the second town center. A decent timing, if you're wondering, to add in your second town center is about 5 minutes 50. So that would be, you would have your Song Dynasty finished and you're adding in your second town center. That means it's starting to build at 5 minutes 50. That's a decent time for you, even after the last patch. And I'll show you a build order in this video, how you can do that. So that's that strategy. So it's more economically focused. Keep in mind, Song Dynasty's got the power of 3 town centers when you do 2 TCs. And yeah, that's it. The third strategy, it is one I'm not going to talk about too much here, but it's just a spear defense, which is where you play it primarily up against the Mongols. You can also be very strong against the Malians, as well as the Ottomans as well. In fact, it's quite good against a lot of civs, actually, but it just, I don't know how effective it's going to be in the entire meta. But those are essentially the strategies, but we're not going to talk too much about the spear defense. The other one is just your water opening, which is something else that we will go over. So when it comes to unit compositions, what are the types of units that you're going to be making? What are your main big ones that you're going to be thinking about? So in almost all matchups, you're going to be running with spearmen and Zhukunu in the feudal age. And it's probably best that we divide this into your feudal age armies, your castle age armies, and your imperial armies. But for the most part, it's just going to be, and you know what, we can probably even jump into the game right now and just demonstrate it, because it makes it probably a bit easier when we draw this out on a screen. So what we'll do is we'll make sure that we allow cheats, and we'll put on maximum, and we want to make it so that we start in age 1, just because, oh, that should be, never mind, that should be in, yeah, we want to start in age 1 so that we can get our dynasties. So we'll talk about our unit compositions a little bit here, and just have a bit of an understanding. We'll put 1, 2 down, put a barracks down, put an Imperial Academy down. So just getting everything down right now, and then we're going to just type in a jiffy, and everything is going to finish in a jiffy. So your most common composition that you're going to be playing is Zhukunu and Spearman. So that's going to look like this. You're always going to try and get your Spearman upgrade. So you're going to be typically massing a lot of Zhukunu and then just have a supplementary amount of spearmen. It's not going to be too many. Now, one of the best things that you can do is make sure that you keep your Zhukunu in a line like this, a line formation. So this one down here. So this is going to be your main composition. Now, there are matchups where you play a different composition. So, as an example, against the French, you're going to be playing a Spearman-Horseman composition. So, typically, you're going to open up with Spearmen just to defend against their raids, and then they're going to follow up with some archers, so you're going to get some horsemen out. And very often, you will see large numbers of horsemen and spears in this matchup. Do not be afraid to go up to 20 horsemen and something like 15 spears in this matchup. This is how the matchup is played. When they start adding spears, you're going to have to start adding your own archers. Now, you can add Shukunu, but archers are just as effective in this matchup because the only reason you're making archers are to kill the enemy spearmen. So, if you're playing against the French, then you can consider doing that. So, these are the most common compositions that we see people go. It's very rare. You don't see people go horsemen and Shukunu a lot, but it is quite decent in the English matchup, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's a bit more of an advanced strategy. You do have to be very good at micro to make this work because you have to be always moving your Shukunu. So that is where we would leave the feudal age army compositions. Now, I'll be going over each matchup and tell you when you should be using these matchups against what civilizations. But let's move on into the third age now, and we're going to talk about probably the best and easiest combination that you as a player can have. So it's going to be nice and easy. It's going to be palace guards and spearmen. Okay, that's the first part. So very easy to micro. You're going to make sure you always get your veterancy upgrade for them. Okay, and then you're going to be adding in a few of these bad boys right here. Nest of bees. You're going to roll some of these guys off the parking lot, and that's what it's going to look like. It's a very simple composition right there. So basically, your palace guards are going to be diving any enemy springalds, and they're just going to be serving as your front line. That is it. So basically, if you see enemy springalds, all you're going to do is you're going to pull back your nest of bees, and you're going to send your palace guards forward like that. Now, another great thing that you can do with this combination is you can also go for Yuan Dynasty, and that's going to increase the movement speed of your units so that now they're running faster. And so that makes palace guards even stronger because now they've got that... Now they've got the extra movement speed. Now keep in mind also when they charge as well, they get an increased movement speed. So at the moment they're at like 1.58. I think it goes up to like 1.9 or something stupid. Another important thing, make sure you keep your nest of bees in line formation as well. You want them all to be getting off shots at the same time. You don't want them to be delaying shots, but that's how you want to play your front line. And once again, you can try and do a line formation out there. I would recommend avoiding a line formation with your spears when you're playing defensive like this. Because your spears, you don't want to have these guys on the offensive. I mean, if you're like absolutely destroying the fight or crushing the fight, that's fine. But say you're against a French player, you are going to need to keep your spears closer to your nest of bees. Just simply because the knights are always going to be coming in and looking to try and take out the nest of bees. But remember that you want your palace guards on the front line chasing away enemy units. You want the nest of bees killing archers, and you want your spearmen defending. Now, another thing that you can be doing is bringing villagers forward as well with this push. When it comes through, it's normally best to play defensive when you're playing like this, but bring villagers forward so that you can put some repairs onto these, and also drop down that keep as well. Keeps are really powerful with China. They've got the best keeps in the game, so always be thinking about those. Now, the other combination that is very, very strong for China in the mid game, it's a bit more of a strange one because we've seen it before, but it is going to be horsemen and spears. That's right. So one of China's big transitions that they love to do is going onto farms. And so what's the best way you can take advantage of farms? It's high costing food units. So you will see this composition come out quite a lot. This is amazing, this composition as well, because it's very potent at killing everything. Now, one of the other things that you can do is just mix in palace guards and fire lancers as well. So don't be afraid to mix those in. If you've got a little bit of spare gold, go for it. And then you can always follow this up with just, a nest of bee or two, something like that, just to put a little bit more pressure on. And that's it. And so it's very easy to play that because it's an all melee composition. So you really don't have to think too much. It's basically like Protoss. You just attack, move, and then you just like roll your face on the keyboard. So there's not a whole lot of micro that it takes for this composition. Now, there are more advanced compositions that you see. But as an example, you might be playing against the Abbasid dynasty, and they'll be going for a man-at-arm and crossbow composition. Now, you don't want to match that composition, and the reason why is your crossbows are quite decent, but your palace guards are not. Your palace guards have one less armor than your enemy, so when it comes to your advantage, it's not in head-to-head fights, but rather it's in mobility. So you want to avoid this kind of composition here against other players that are doing a similar composition to you. You can try and outdo them, but say against like the English or something, they're always going to just have an advantage over you when it comes to those head-to-head fights. But now we move to the late game. This is where the compositions really start to get a bit more diverse. So the big thing for the late game, do we have villagers or did I delete them? I must have deleted them. So the primary thing that's going to increase your diversity is the Spirit Way, because all of a sudden this makes your dynasty units actually insanely good. And so one of the most common comps that you'll see in the game is this one. So you're going to go for Elite Spearmen. So make sure you always get that elite upgrade. And then it's Hand Cannoneers. And Chinese Hand Cannoneers are very good because they get the extra range from Pyrotechnics, and they also get Chemistry automatically. So they get an extra 7 damage automatically. Chemistry gives 20%. It's available at the university, but if we go and build a university right now, you see that the chemistry isn't even available for us to research, simply because it has already been researched. That's how good that is. There's a lot of synergy there for that. Now, the one thing that you're always going to want to do here is add in just Chokunu, just not a whole lot. Like when it comes to your army, like you want to have a pretty decent balance between spears and hand cannoneers, but then just adding in a handful of Chukunu, and you will want them to die in the fights, and sometimes they won't die, but they will. So they will make their way to the front line. So you can see right there, that's the formation. So spears, obviously, they get on the front. They're fighting. Hand cannoneers have 5.5 tiles of range. Chukunu have 4. So naturally, they're going to move to the front, right? And so they will get picked off by your enemy. And when they do, that's going to be increasing the attack speed of all units around them. So that goes down to 1.83 attack speed. It's also going to be healing all of these units on the backside, which is, obviously a really good thing. You want that, but you can see there's 2.12 attack speed, and then, one of these, you can delete them yourself if you really want to. I do it all the time. Goes down to 1.83. Now, the other thing as well, make sure you're mixing in your Fire Lancers for your front line. So basically, you're supplementing the back line with Chukunu and the front line with Fire Lancers. You can get your Fire Lancer upgrade. Typically, you do want to do this through the Spirit Way as well, because it is cheaper. So always look to do that. But just note, with regard to the unique units, your Fire Lancer does not replace your Horseman, okay? So if your enemy's spamming archers, don't be making Fire Lancers against it. You can make a few Fire Lancers against it, but you want to still be making Horsemen. Horsemen get that bonus 13 against ranged, compared to the Fire Lancer, which just does nothing against ranged. So you can see it does 23 Fire Lance damage, but I don't actually think that's real if we do that. Yeah, it's only 13 damage. It's 23 when it's got the explosive on it. So that is your primary late game composition, something like that, but there's still other compositions that you can go. Another composition that you will see out of people is just a very classic. This is quite decent against the English. So it's Lancers and Crossbows. So just like that, and that's a little bit easier on the gold, so you don't have to go for the Hand Cannoneers. Obviously still mixing in your Dynasty units here. But that's going to be your primary unit compositions throughout the ages. Now let's talk a little bit about the matchups, because when it comes to matchups, you play each matchup very, very differently. Now we're going to assume at this point that every single matchup that you're playing is on Dry Arabia or a relatively open map. Let's have a look and see exactly what that looks like. So this is your early strategy. So against China, my advice is to go for a 2 TC Song Dynasty, and then in the Feudal Age, play it out with Chukunu and Spearmen. So the idea is that you just want to look to try and pressure enemy food spots. So you want to go out to their berries, you want to go out to their deer, because they're going to have a Barbican and they're going to have a town center, but they're not going to have that protection forever. And China goes through food very, very quickly. So I would advocate, look, try and be a little bit aggressive, and then maybe think about going up to the Castle Age afterwards. I actually play quite a few China mirrors, and my favorite strategy is just 2 TC Song Dynasty. And the reason why we go 2 TC Song Dynasty and not 1 TC Song Dynasty is because 2 TC Song Dynasty can hold against a 1 TC Song Dynasty timing push. So if it's only a 1 battering ram timing push, you can hold it with villagers. If it's a 2 battering ram timing push, you will have enough Shukunu to kill the enemy by the time they get to your base, just simply because of how powerful Imperial officials are with things like, villagers on deer, villagers on berries, that sort of thing, because it's an extra 20%. So I would advocate for that. Now, I would advocate the same play style as well against the Abbasid Dynasty. So typically the Abbasid Dynasty, whenever you play against them, if they get into a matchup with China, they're going straight for 3 town centers. But often their follow-up is to go to Castle Age. So what you can do is you can look to push them with Spear, Chukunu, and once again, hit those food points. Make sure you're just camping their resources. And don't send like 10 units to each resource. Just send like 1 or 2. It's absolutely fine. Like 2 Chukunu will shut down berries completely. And they'll be forced. Okay, I have to make a decision. Do I build an outpost or do I build production? And you win either way. If they build production, they stay longer in the Second Age. You can fight them on your own terms. If they build an outpost, then you've won because they're not spending resources on production. So it works really well both ways. When it comes to the Delhi, you don't have enough time to go for 2 TC Song Dynasty. You want to avoid you want to make sure that they avoid getting their sacred sites as much as they can, or as much as you can. Now, in this matchup, it's very common that they are going to open a stable. And because of that, they kind of know that China likes to play into Shukunu. So you'll often see them going for an early blacksmith as well, looking to get +1 ASAP. So I would just make sure in this matchup, when it comes to balancing which units you're making, I would say you really want to make sure that you're scouting the Delhi player and seeing how many horsemen they have, because you're gonna need spearmen. When it comes to these other two matchups, spearmen are like a thing that you don't really have to think too much about. Obviously, if you're playing against China and they do 2 TC Song and you start pushing with Shukunu and you see a stable, then you add a barracks. But again, against the Abbasid, they've got a higher proclivity to go for a stable, so I would just advise probably best. But your focus is still here on the Shukunu throughout all of these stages. You want to be massing this unit up as much as you can. Against the Mongols, it's a bit tricky. So some players are quite competent with, or quite happy just to go for a very fast age up and put a Barbican down. You can do that, and that's fine. I do think it kind of takes away a lot of the agency from China, though. It limits them, and there's the potential for an outpost to get up. So I like to play in the Dark Age, and so I basically just go for a Dark Age spear defense into Imperial Academy, and then a second town center. So basically, while I'm aging up, I'm collecting the resources for a second town center, and then a Barbican. Now, I can't show you any of the replays, just obviously because there's a new patch that has dropped, and so I've lost all my replays. You can see the only replays I've got here are the replays I've just played today. So I did have a whole bunch of replays for this strategy and others that are similar, but unfortunately, yeah, I can't show you that one right now. But hopefully it comes again. Hopefully it comes again. But then eventually just moving into Song Dynasty and Mongols, they're an interesting civilization. So my theory is this. So if you're playing against the Mongols, you want to make spears. Even if they don't attack you, you want to make spears, because the likelihood that they get their Uvu and their gold underneath their town center is very low. So what you're going to be doing is applying pressure wherever they don't have a town center. So if they don't have a town center near their gold, then you hit their gold. If they don't have a town center near their Uvu, then you hit their Uvu. And now you're going to force them to react, whether that's an outpost, whether that's a barracks themselves. You're going to force them to react, and you're going to put the aggression out onto their side of the map. By the same token, if they do tower rush you, what you're going to be doing is looking to focus down the villager with your own spears. When it comes to spear micro, it's a really, really intricate style, so you have to be very careful with spear micro once you start getting to the top levels, but essentially it just involves pulling back the weaker spears and then allowing them to re-engage when they're not being targeted down. If your enemy is playing Mongols, they're typically thinking about going to the castle age and making lances. So even if you go up to like 10 or 15 spears, they're still going to have a really strong presence throughout the mid game, so you're not losing anything by making those spearmen. So that's essentially the way that I like to play the matchup. I do like to play it quite a bit in the feudal age and massing up Shukunu in the feudal age until I've got critical mass. Against the Holy Roman Empire, it's another case of the Delhis. So if you go for a 2 TC Song Dynasty, even if you go for a 1 TC Song Dynasty, you're still going to be too slow. So the Holy Roman Empire, at least previously the way that they played, it's all about just getting to the castle age and getting your relics as quickly as possible. So the way that I play this matchup is I'm going to be focusing on aging up and then starting to make spearmen and horsemen, and then those are going to be moving out to the enemy base. I'm going to be looking to idle the enemy as well, but the main idea is that there's going to be 5 relics on the map, and what I'm going to be doing is walling off each of the relics behind, in the center of the map, and I'm going to be fighting over their closest relic. And so what that does is that draws all the attention to that relic. That's where they're sending their knights, that's where they're sending their men-at-arms, that's where they're sending absolutely every single unit so that they can try and get that relic. Because for them, it's a mental block point. They must get that relic before they can begin the rest of the game. And behind that, what you're doing is you're just walling off the other relics. Eventually, you're going to add in Song Dynasty and then going to add in Shukunu. But essentially, the idea is that you're just going to overwhelm your enemy because they've got no relics. They don't have that extra gold production. And because they don't have that extra gold production, they don't have all those units. And you can happily play this matchup out in the feudal age and do quite well against a castle age Holy Roman Empire. That's my recommendation. The Ottomans, a bit of a weird matchup because they do start out with early spears. You don't see every Ottoman player do this. But my recommendation is just go for a normal age up here. Don't be doing any early Song Dynasties and just go straight into archers. So you just want 1 or 2. It's not a huge deal now. This archery range, it will you know, it's kind of useless, but I guess that's the power of the Ottoman and their early military schools. They do force you into archers, because if you don't go into archers, you've got to make spears to contest them, and they've got free spears, so it's not a good trade. But eventually you want to get to 2 TC Song, and then you want to try and age up. So the Ottoman player will typically try and play it in feudal age, but you don't want to get caught in the feudal age with the Ottomans. In my opinion, you will lose that. The Ottomans are very strong in the feudal age because of the meta. So I think that it's best just to go straight to the castle age, try and play a really tight base defense, and go for nest of bees. If you can do that, get a nest of bees, you've got a handful of spearmen just to defend against Sparky, you should be able to hold their push and maintain. As long as you can maintain villager production throughout that, then you're going to be okay. The main issue that you're going to have is your food sources, so you will need to push out to secure those. So if you get a bad spawn, it could be really difficult in that matchup. Next up, it's going to be the French. So the French as a civilization, it's a pretty well-studied matchup, this matchup, French versus China. So what you're going to be doing is just opening with your Imperial Academy, and you're going to be dropping down Iraqs just to get 2 spears out. That's going to defend your resources that you might need to defend. And then you're going into Song Dynasty. That's going to enable you to keep up with villager production, and then you're going to be moving into Horsemen, Spearmen. And then you basically add archers whenever they add spears. That's essentially it. So as soon as you see the barracks down, you drop your archery range down. And then it becomes difficult, because you really don't want to get locked in a feudal battle with the French when it starts to get big armies, because they will typically win, because the knight does trade very effectively. So you want to try and keep the enemy on their toes. It can be very hard though, so I would advocate walling up a lot in this matchup and really just playing to the strength of your Barbicans, play to the strength of your town center, let them push in and you defend. Don't ever push out against the French. You will lose everything. Against the Rus, this is another matchup, but it's a little bit different to the French. So the French love to go for that early fast knight. The Rus, at the moment, they're a little bit slower, so you don't have to get the early racks out. You can just go straight for Song Dynasty and then go into Spearmen and Horsemen. You can play it on 1 TC. It's not a problem at all. Last but not least, it is probably the most defensive matchups that you can play. So the idea here is that you're going to be going for 2 TC Song Dynasty against the English and the Malians, straight for Nest of Bees and Palace Guards. Now, there is a caveat here. It's if there is an early longbow coming out from the English player, then you will need to make a stable, and just a single horseman will be able to shut that down. If they make a single horseman, or if they make a longbows and spears, it can be a bit more difficult. So yeah, it can be very annoying trying to protect your villagers against that kind of aggression, because now you're really going to need to invest a lot of resources into dealing with them. But the Malians, they're also a civilization that likes to play a bit more economically focused. You should be able to defend against them just with your town centers, with your Barbican, and get yourself up to the 3rd age. So once you've got Nest of Bees, then you're going to be able to shred through those Donzos, through the Javelin Throwers, and that will give you a really good a really good position against them. So that's each individual matchup. I hope I haven't missed anything. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yeah, that's all the matchups. So that's early strategy. Now, it's important that you understand exactly where the civilization's strength lies as well. So as an example, you know, the longer the game goes against the Delhi, the better it gets for China, because China's really strong in the late game compared to Delhi. But compare that to, say, the Ottomans or the Abbasid dynasty, and now, you know, China... You can play the late game, but you really don't want to against, you know, those 2 civilizations, or English. I mean, China's still on a pretty decent footing, right? But if you can end it earlier, you know, in castle, late castle, then you want to try and do that as much as possible. So now that we've talked about matchups, let's talk about map-specific strategies. So we're going to go in and jump into the multiplayer, and we're going to go into ranked, and we're going to view the map preferences. Now, my understanding is that maps will change for this season, but for the moment, I'm going to focus on the maps that we've got here and the way that you should be playing them. So when it comes to Altai, it's a really defensive map. Now, personally, I don't like this map because it has such a high rate of... The game, like, loves this map. It just gives you Altai. It's like, oh... this person hasn't downvoted Altai, and this person hasn't downvoted Altai. Altai it is! It just gives everyone Altai. So I'm actually going to be downvoting Altai this season. But essentially what you want to be doing is, it's all about controlling the choke points here. So even though we've got an idea of the way that we want to play against civilizations in a matchup, we need to make sure that we're not rigid, we need to be flexible, and we need to be constantly thinking about our environment. And so for Altai, you can play it a bit more defensively. You can wall up your base. Typically on Altai, you're going to have forests at the front of your base, don't be afraid to wall between those and sit back behind there, make an extra town center, something like that. It's very popular to do, but just remember that you've got to think about the matchup. If you're up against the Holy Roman Empire and you do that, you wall up, you make a second town center, well, now they get all 5 relics and they're going to steamroll you in Imperial. So, you know, it's about thinking about the matchup as well. When it comes to Ancient Spires, we're always going to be playing the water. You always want to do a water start. Now, we will be going over a water start in this video. So you want to be doing a water start. Now, I'm of the theory that you can actually get away on this map with doing like 2 or 3 dock openings. And I know that seems kind of crazy, but typically your enemy's not going to be applying too much pressure to your water. So I would almost be suggesting to people, I mean, you don't want to play it too crazy. 1 dock is fine. You can get a 5-minute 1 dock opening very easily with China. So I'll be showing you that. And I think that's probably a good starting point. When it comes to overarching strategy for Ancient Spires as a map, I would definitely suggest going for a fast castle build order into Palace Guards. This is a lot of fun. Basically, get up to the castle age and spam out Palace Guards and just hit your enemy from every angle. It's a really fun strategy on Ancient Spires. Dry Arabia. It's an open map. You guys are familiar with this. You want to try and wall off with the forests that you've got and keep yourself nice and safe. But remember, the overarching strategy that we talked about here is what is important. You know, you don't really want to be walling yourself off against the Holy Roman Empire because you want to be on the aggressive. But against the French, it makes a lot of sense. Against the Rus, it makes a lot of sense. Forest Ponds. This is going to be fighting over water. That's going to be the primary thing. So you're going to be looking to fight over your enemy's water and at the same time defend on your own water. It can be very difficult, quite intensive when it comes to multitasking. But your overarching strategy here should be a similar one to Ancient Spires, where you're going to stay on 1 town center, go for a very fast castle age, and go into Palace Guards. So typically what we're thinking about is getting +2 ranged armor and then Palace Guards as well. And that way we can dive town centers without taking too much damage. Hideout. It's a bit of an interesting map, a bit of a meme map. I'm not actually sure why it's here compared to something like Prairie. So when it comes to my advice on how to play this, it's just pretty much, yeah, cool map. I really don't know what to tell you guys though. 2 TC Song, like obviously there's a lot of distance between you and your enemy. So I guess 2 TC Song has a bit more of a higher chance to win here. Obviously, your 1 TC Song is going to be a bit slower just because of the extra walking distance around the forest. So that's important to think of. Hill and Dale, an interesting map and one that you can actually do 3 TC Song on in some matchups. This is one of my favorite matchups on this map. It's the Holy Roman Empire versus China because it allows you to play it in a completely different way. So Holy Roman Empire on this map loves to just take all the relics and go Imperial. And what you can do is you can just wall yourself in. You've got so many resources in your base. You can go 3 TC Song, go Imperial yourself, and then just overwhelm them with Shukunu in the Imperial Age. And it's fucking, well, it's absolutely wild. I shouldn't say the F word because, you know, YouTube demonetization, all that kind of stuff. But yeah. So when it comes to Hill and Dale, though, it's a bit more defensive. I would advocate on this map, even if you are the aggressor, let's say you're playing against the Holy Roman Empire, you're walling out their relics, wall yourself in as well. Make sure you just keep a gate up at the front. It's just very easy to do. So, you know, if one knight sleeps, gets through, you might lose 10 villages. But if it never gets through, then you never lose the villas, do you? So, yeah, I would just say make sure you wall up your sides. That's your main tip there. Lipany, similar to Dry Arabia, but obviously the map generations on this map is kind of terrible just because of the way that the cliffs spawn. Sometimes you can get like forests with cliffs. So I would advise you to look for choke points and wall them out. You know, the longer the game goes on, the better for China. So I would say if you do see choke points on the map where, you know, a cliff has spawned next to a wood line, and then, you know, there's a space and then another cliff, wall it. Just wall it. It makes it so much easier. You don't have to think about it. Wall it. Chuck a gate in it later if you want. Chuck a gate in it now. I don't mind. But just wall it and control where your enemy can attack you from. It makes it much easier. Mediterranean, our only real water map here. Actually, you know what? Forest Ponds is kind of a water map, isn't it? It's a bit different, but Mediterranean is obviously like a winner takes all. Once you win the middle, that's it. So this is all about aggression. So Forest Ponds, it's about multitasking. Mediterranean, it's about aggression. So this, I'll show you a build order that you can be using on Mediterranean as well as on Forest Ponds. The main difference on Forest Ponds is you're going to need to split your docks into each corner, and you're also going to need to be walling off your own corner so that you are going to be nice and safe from enemy dock drops. There we go. All right, the pit. A bit of an interesting map, this map. You do spawn quite close to your enemy. In my opinion, on this map, you do have a higher win rate chance you probably have a better shot if you go for 1 TC song. Players will often look to expand on the sides. If you can identify what side it is, just hit them straight on that side. You've got a very short distance to get to that side, so just go for it. That would be my recommendation. So that is it when it comes to maps. So now we're going to move on to a next point, which is really important for China, and it is base building. Base building for China is one of the most important things that you as a player need to learn how to do. And the reason why is because of the Imperial Official. The Imperial Official is not a smart unit. It is a very dumb unit. The AI is not, I'm not going to say not well written, but rather still needs a lot of writing to do. So it needs a lot of improvement. So when it comes to your base building as China, let's just start by pointing out the very first thing that I think a lot of players are going to need to start adjusting to with China. Typically, we see China go for a mill on the berries. All right. Now, if you place a mill on the berries, that's fine. Okay. It means that you've got walking distance. So, you know, you're out here on your berries. Wonderful. And so if you run out of food on your sheep, then you can very easily transfer over to berries. But what if I told you that we can just make it so you don't run out of food on your sheep? Yeah, that's right. So what we're going to do as China is, instead of putting our mill here on the berries, we're going to put our mill on the town center. So typically I like this spot right here in the middle. This is really, really flexible. I'll explain about that later. And what we're going to be doing with our scout is just running a little loop around our base. And we always go towards our enemy first, and then we try and loop around it, because our enemy might just run directly to our base. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick up at least 5 sheep. If we're having a very good day, a very normal day, we're going to pick up at least 5 sheep. And then we're going to drop it back off. Now, you're going to think about that, right? Because you start with 3 sheep. That's 8 sheep. That's 2,000 food. That's a lot of food. In fact, that's enough food to last you until like the 11th minute. So why are we building our mill on the berries? That's a good question. We're not. The reason why is because it just seems like a very obvious choice, right? You put your mill on the berries, but don't think of these berries as a starting berries. Think of these berries as an expansion berries. You don't want to take these berries. Rather, you want to be using that at a later point in the game, and really maximizing your efficiency from it. So that's the first thing. You want to be doing your mill in the base. And I'll just show you how it starts off, or how you should be typically doing your starts with China. Now, China does a lot of wood starts. So just in almost every single start, except for the water start, we're going to be opening Imperial, Official, and then Villager. So I'm going to do that now. So Imperial, Official, Villager. I'm going to move all villagers over to my wood. I'm going to collect the sheep around my town center. And I'm going to be placing my mill right here. So I'm going to move this sheep into position. All right, let's get those guys out there, and he can do a little loop around there. And now I'm going to, as soon as this Imperial Official comes out of the town center, I'm going to pause it right now. As soon as the Imperial Official comes out of the town center, the villagers are going to be ready to drop the mill down. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, boom. Supervise that. Now, we can't actually get that. The hitbox on this is not the best. And so that's going to drop off 72 wood. Okay, and that's where our mill's going to be. So that's how we start off the game every single time. Nice and easy like that. And then that way, when our Imperial Official wants to drop off tax to the town center, you're not going to have to force drop with villagers, which decreases their efficiency. And you're not going to miss out any of these villagers. They're all going to be getting +2, and you're just going to click, and then click back. Nice and easy. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to hassle about it. There's no like, oh, my Imperial Official didn't do that. So basically what we're doing here is just taking advantage of the fact that China has bugs, and we have a way that we can stop those bugs by just simply not giving rise to the circumstances in which they can occur. So that's it. And then, so when it comes to placing your house, there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. So one of the most common things that you'll see players do is do like a build order like this, where they go house and then mining camp, so something like that. And then eventually you're going to be dropping down a lumber camp as well. Now, the big thing when it comes to Chinese base building is your Imperial Academy placement. So there's a lot of rules that you follow, but number 1 rule is it must include your mill. Number 2 rule is it must include your lumber camp. Number 3 rule is that it should try and hit your mining camps if possible. You want to always try and hit your gold, but if you can't, that's okay. Now, it can be really hard learning where the space is, but my theory is, or my suspicion is, just looking at this. By the way, obviously we haven't been watching the sheep, so we've only got 2. There were plenty of sheep out there, like there was a little dude down there. I guess he got collected. But typically we should have 5 sheep here. Obviously, if we're paying attention, we do. So just by eyeballing this, I think that this gap is going to be too big between the lumber camp and the mining camp. And if that's the case, I'm just going to try and put the Imperial Academy as close as I can to this lumber camp. So let's have a look. Oh, we get it. Look at that. So I'm within. It's perfect, right? So one more tile that way, it wouldn't have gone in. One more tile this way, and it doesn't go through. But we can hit both of them. So we can make a decision as to whether we want to do that or whether we want to just go straight over here. Now, I would probably still just do this. I think this is absolutely fine like this, but just keep in mind that look, it's not that important, but the key thing here is that you just want to do this, all right? It's really, you want to hit these starting guys. So don't spend too much time putting down your Imperial Academy. One thing to note is that if you don't have the resources for it, you can't open it up and hover over it. So you actually have to start counting. And the best way to do that is just to count with your tiles. So you just go from the tile, so you can just drop a house down like that, and you can go, okay, so that's 2, 4, 5. So you can see the tile, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then that's where it would go, and then you try and do it on the other side. It can be really difficult, though, doing it, and often you'll have to try and do it as quickly as you can. The most common default spot that I would just suggest that you do is just put it in line with the town center, like that. And if that works, then go for it. Otherwise, if you can get it in like that, then go for that as well. Next thing is, when it comes to the placement of your villages for base building with China, you want to try and keep these near resources. Like right here is a really good spot, because if you've got villages on the wood line and a raid comes in, then that villager is going to be able to protect those villagers. The only thing is that you want to be using this space in your Imperial Academy for your military production buildings. So you always need to remain cognizant through once the game starts to get later. Maybe you want to start deleting these villages. So you will often see players when they do put their Imperial Academy down, they'll put their villages in a bit of a weird spot. Like that might seem weird, but then you look at this and you want to keep all of this space available for your military production. So that's the primary way that you're thinking about doing base building with China. When it comes to your military production, I've talked about this in the last video, but essentially what you want to be doing is there is a perfect way to be placing all of your production buildings, and that is you start with the final corner right here, and then that forms the basis of a grid. And from here, we can actually fit 32 production buildings around our Imperial Academy. So there you can see we've got 12. Obviously, if we filled it out completely, then we have even more. If we get a perfect spawn, it's 32. Obviously, we don't, because we've got a town center. As the game goes on and we start collecting tax from our mill, and it's got no tax left into it, and these villages maybe migrate down to the berries, then we can think about deleting this mill. And then once we've deleted that mill, that's going to open up new spots. Because now that mill is deleted, well, it doesn't actually open up new spots. There you go. Because the mill was snug up against the town center. But very often, you will be able to delete a building, and it will open up a new spot for you. You know, maybe even when you think about the late game, and we're no longer using these, so we can delete the house, delete the mining camp, and then all of a sudden we're going to add in the barracks. Now, when it comes to lining up these guys, because you're not going to be able to do this every single time, the easiest way to do it is just to divide your Imperial Academy into 2 blocks of 2. So it's the same size as 4 houses, like that. So that's what you want to be thinking of it as. And then you want to be just picking the middle and then making sure the barracks is on one specific side. So you can see right there, we've just got 2 tiles, and so that's going to be in line. We also want to come out by 1 tile. I know it's finicky, but just like that. And then that's always going to be in line. And you can do that from any angle. So you can do it from the front like this. So you can see right here. So right there. And then that's still going to be in line with everything else. So it's quite easy to follow once you understand how it works. But essentially just divide it in half and then come out by a single tile. And that's going to give you the perfect amount of space for that. So that's Chinese base building. Now, the other thing to note is that when it comes to Chinese base building, you've got a really, really important building. Let's get in a jiffy. Oh, cheats are not enabled for this game. Okay. Do we turn cheats on? Yeah, I think we go turn cheats on. So, you've got the granary, and the granary is one of the most important units for the Chinese, because it allows their mid-game farm transition to really be accelerated quite a lot. So compare it to other civilizations as an example, like, you know, the Rus, who have a very slow farm transition. They do have ways that they empower it, obviously through the extra wood gathering, obviously trying to get that 20% as well. But with China, not only do you get that extra 20% of wood gathering from your imperial official, but you also get an enhanced gather rate. So we're just going to drop these bad boys down anywhere, and we're going to talk about how you would think of, or the way that you would go about expanding with this. So one of the big things that when you're expanding with China and the farms is that you're going to need a big space. And normally you want this at the back of your base, but you're not always going to have it. You know, maybe you build a blacksmith down here or something like this, but this is a pretty decent space down here along the edge of the map. The other thing that you can do is up towards this spot. There's a really decent opening here where you're going to have a lot of villagers. You know, your villagers will eventually move out over onto the berries and then over onto the deer, and then from there they can move out over here. So this is a great open space. And the other thing to note is that you're probably going to be walling this up, right? It seems pretty easy to wall. So very defensible. That's a great spot. So that's what we're going to be looking at for our expansion point. Now we're just going to start it off with a nice small amount of villagers here. And I'm being serious, this is a small amount of farming villagers. For China, don't be afraid to go up to like 70 villagers on farms. As we talked about in the unit comp section, China's comps are very food heavy. So it's quite common to do that. So we'll kill this wolf, and I will show you some of the best ways that you can build China bases. Now, it's always going to depend on your space. You're not always going to have the luxury of space depending on your maps. So the most basic one that you can do, it's just a very simple. So you want to try and maximize the space that you've got. So we're going to go 4 tiles. And then from there, we're just going to put all 3 of these guys next to each other like that. Nice and easy. And then we're just going to put all of our farms around. I'm like doing this. I'm trying to do this carefully. Okay, and then I got to delete these. And then we're just going to put 2 rows. So this is a very easy way for you to start adding in your farms. So, you know, maybe if you don't have a lot of space, then this works. And this is quite efficient because the way that the granary works is it's buffing up your villager gather rates by 10%. Let's just do that so that they should all go in different directions. Gosh, they're so buggy, aren't they? Yeah, so by having them all together, you're actually stacking up a lot of villagers. So this is affecting these villagers here, all out here. This is affecting that. So these guys are getting 20%, and then these guys here in the middle are getting 30% because they're getting hit by all of these. So it really buffs it up. And then you obviously want to pick up your upgrades as well. So get your wheelbarrow, get your horticulture. And so that is your very basic build. Now, there are other ways that you can do it. As an example, now I'm just going to use the village here to represent the granary. Actually, you know what? I'm going to delete this granary instead because it's going to be easier. So one of the other ways that you can do it, let's get another 8 villas out. All right, so we've got 12 vills. Perfect. So just drop down the granary and then just like that. Nice and easy. The game does it all for you. And you just go plop down some of those around the map. It doesn't matter. Like, it's not a super duper big deal. Obviously, you can see the influences here. You want to try and maximize it. But the difference that it makes, it's not huge. So I would definitely advocate, you know, if you're, like, you will see pro players that will do this. And they will just have all of these little things dotted around the map. And it's easier like that. But if you really want to min-max, then I would encourage you to do something like this. Now, if you really want to go big league, let's delete all of these, and I'll show you the design that I would consider big league. This is one of the most efficient designs that you can do. Let's get all these. Oh god, it builds so fast I can't stop it. All right. So let's just go pick a spot over here. And so what we're doing is we're doing all of our farms around it like that, but we're also leaving a space for farms at the other one. So it's like that. And then once again, and you can see how much space this requires. Like, it's absolutely massive, the amount of space that this requires. And then from there, we can also double up the farms if you're so inclined to do so. And then once it gets to this stage, like you can see right here, this is 48 farms. Obviously, if we ring them completely, like it's a huge amount of farms. But then, you know, down at the bottom side, you still might need, you know, maybe your wood's piling up and you got 40 vills on wood. Then you just add in another one of these, a mill, and then just drop in some farms around it. That's all you do. So when it comes to Chinese base building, that's probably the best way to do it. But as I said, when it comes to the granary, obviously you want to try and utilize this and maximize the bonuses that you're getting from it. But with China, you've got a big food economy. And that is what that is about. So now let's get into micro. Micro is where it becomes a bit more interesting. I don't know exactly the best way to do this, but I'm going to try and talk about it. So, because obviously I don't have a second player here with me. So let's get in a jiffy on. So we're just going to go over a couple of the main principles of Chinese micro. So let's drop that down. And we get all 3 production facilities down. So we're going to just be starting off with our Chukunu spear. So this is a very common combination that you'll be doing. And so the idea here is that you want to be frontlining all the time with the Chukunu and spearmen at the back. Probably don't want to keep those guys in line formation, but rather in a nice tight formation. And then so the Chukunu are going to push forward like this. And you're going to take out enemy units like that. And you're going to keep falling back. And it's all just about making sure you're getting shots in and that you're falling back. And so that's it. It's all just about getting those shots in. Now, your enemy will eventually come in. Maybe they've got knights, maybe they've got horsemen. It depends what they've got. And that's where your spear are going to come in. Now, they're typically not going to be, you know, super duper competent when it comes to micro. So they're not going to be coming in from the right and coming in from the right, coming in from the left. It'll probably just be one angle. And your spearmen, all you want them to do is meet them. That's it. Now, you can let your units get hit. That's absolutely okay. But you want to make sure that your spears are going to be there to fight and going to be there to clean up. Now, your enemy's probably going to be looking to focus those down. If you're playing against a French player, they're going to be focusing those down. So what you're going to be doing with your Shukunu, instead of attacking the knights, you're going to be attacking the archers on the backside. So your spearmen, you always want them to be hitting cavalry. Your archers, you always want them to be hitting, or your Chukunu, you always want them to be hitting archers. Now, let's say you're against the Abbasid dynasty. That's where it gets a little bit different. Because the Abbasid dynasty, they only have horsemen, which obviously you've got access to horsemen as well, but their horsemen have only got 3 armor. So you've got 2 armor right here, and then once you get the +1 upgrade, so that's a 3 armor. Now, that means that you do double damage against the horsemen compared to the knight, which actually means you can kill them. So before, when we were talking about, you know, your crossbows or your Chukunu killing enemy archers, well, in this matchup, all of a sudden, because your enemy's got horsemen, you can actually kill the horsemen. So instead of you know, standing and fighting, what you can do is just continue kiting. So as the enemy is coming in, you're shoot, 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 and back, and shoot, 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 like that. So that's the way that you need to be thinking about microing Chukunu and spearmen from a sort of, I guess I'd say, a macro level. Obviously, there's more minutiae to it, but that is the general principle. You just want to be making sure you always keep your spears back. You never want to let your spears be fighting. Even if your enemy's only got archers, do not let your spearmen fight. It is like, they just get destroyed in the blink of an eye. It's not worth it. Just keep them on the back line, because maybe cavalry does come in. You're going to need them. So, now that's only early. Once it gets to the late game, then you can start to just throw everything at them. Including the kitchen sink. So now let's talk about the next composition that you're going to be using in Feudal. So it's going to be horsemen and spearmen. Probably one of the easiest comps in the game to micro. Well, look, it's probably not. I take that back. There is a lot of skill that's required to do this. So what you're going to be doing is taking advantage of the charge ability for the spearmen. It all comes down to the timing of the charge ability, because when you're playing with this combination as China, let's say you're up against the French as in your matchup, you're going to be on the defensive. You don't want to be going on the aggressive unless you're going to be playing on one town center, which you can obviously do against the French, but it's probably just best to play on the defensive. But once you start moving out, so let's have a look. I don't know if we can charge. Yeah, we can't charge against any of these units. I don't think we can charge against the boar either. So I don't think we can charge, but what we're going to be doing is we can actually force an engagement with our spears. And the trick here is that we're not charging the knights, we're actually charging the archers. So charge got boosted in the most recent patch, and so basically the way that it works is if you right-click an enemy unit, all of your units are going to go, ah! And they're going to increase in movement speed, and they all also just going to be badasses because they're screaming. So what you're going to do is you're going to force the engagement, because what your enemy wants to do, so your enemy is playing Knight Archer, so let's just like, to demonstrate, let's just put like some Knights and Archers over here. Let's also throw down a couple of houses. So let's say we're up against the French. This is their combination here. And what you're going to see the French player doing is they're going to be using their Knights to draw out your Spearmen. So as the Knights come in, your Spear are going to come forward to protect whatever it is that you've got. And so when your Spearmen come forward, they're going to move their Knights back, and they're going to dance forward, and they're going to bring their Archers up, and they're going to shoot your Spears. Okay, and so what's going to happen is then your Spears are going to go back because they're getting shot by the Archers. And you don't want that, right? Like, you don't want your units to die. So how do you force the fight? How do you force the engagement? Well, that's very fortunate because your units are actually faster, much faster than the enemies. So it's all about speed. So once you're confident you can beat what the enemy's got, then that's go time. And so here we've got the Horseman, which is 1.88 movement speed versus 1.62 movement speed Knight. And the Archer, which is 1.25 against the Hardened Spearman, which is 1.25, but it has the charge, which takes it to like 1.5 movement speed. So what you're going to do is once you're confident, once you're ready to go, all you're going to do is you're going to take all of these guys and you're just going to right click on any of these archers, any of them whatsoever. And then, so I'll try my best to like demonstrate how it works. So let's say you've got your enemy over there. And so they're kiting you. So now you're going to attack, and then you're going to attack in. At the same time, they're going to move all of their Knights forward to try and screen, and then they're going to keep coming back like that, and you're continuing to push forward at the same time. And I know it's confusing because everybody's the same color, but I'm doing the best I can, all right? I'm doing the best I can. But that's essentially it. And then you're just going to utilize that charge. Now, when it comes to your units, this is where it gets really tough in this, because you have to really make sure that they're killing the right thing. Now, very fortunately, your units don't really overkill. Now, they can overkill, but they don't really overkill. Archers, they do. So right now, let's take a look at these archers. So we can see these archers do 11 damage against spearmen. Okay. And we have 16 of them, which means that we're doing 176 damage. Now, these guys have got one attack, which means that they're only doing, or one armor rather, which means that we're doing 160 damage. As you can see, we're almost double the damage of a single spearman. So if your enemy is microing down and shooting your spears one by one, they're getting the effective value of like 9 archers rather than 16. Okay? So it gives you an advantage on the damage numbers, but it also means that you need to be attacking the right thing. The horseman has bonus damage against ranged units, which is an archer, and the spearman has bonus damage against cavalry, which is the lancer. So you always want to be telling your spears to be attacking enemy lancers, and your horsemen to always be attacking enemy archers. Now, when big fights happen, we all go a little bit cross-eyed. Now, this is kind of like a joke that I have with my friends. Like, when there's so much going on the screen, you just kind of go cross-eyed. Like, you don't know what's happening, basically. Like, you're just like, ah! Try your best not to go cross-eyed and really focus in. Don't check your idle villages. Don't add in more production. Just focus on the moment. Focus on the battle. Focus on everything that's happening right there. And that's the best advice I can give you when it comes to microing this type of feudal fight. So you want to be retargeting all the time. And look, it's going to get pretty ugly. Like, there's going to be times where you've got knights that are like that, and then you bring your spearmen out and your horsemen, and like everything is on top of each other, and you're not sure what's attacking what. But typically what's going to happen is your enemy is going to try and get their archers to the back line. So you can kind of leave your spearmen alone. They will naturally attack the knights. It's mainly the horsemen that you want to try and push through the enemy units and get on top. And you want to try and get them behind the archers so that it blocks them, and then you're going to attack move once again from behind. And then you can individually micro them, you know, like pull these guys here, that kind of thing. And if you really want, you can also do some shift clicks. Now, I would advocate not to do a whole lot of shift clicks, because as an example, let's say you take all your spearmen and you go shift. What that's going to do is it's going to tell all of these spearmen to attack that single knight. And if there's no more room to attack that single knight, they're going to go walkabouts all the way around, and then they're going to come back, and then they're going to be attacked the whole time by knights. So I would just say, if you're going to be doing it, like, you want to be like shift clicking in lower numbers rather than higher numbers. But that's probably going to be it for the micro component of this. Obviously, we talked about other compositions that you can do, but you know, they're largely melee compositions, and you can play hand cannon spearmen the same way that you play Shukunu spearmen. So it's pretty simple. All right. Well, let's take a look at another build order. So I've got another 2 build orders here for you. So we've got a water opening, and then we've got a more general opening. Now, this opening was done by Anomi. Anomi is a, I guess he's a Twitch guy. I mean, I saw him on Twitch originally. He actually came into my chat. He's like, hey, you got to try this build order. Originally, I didn't like it because from a theoretical standpoint, you do have less villages than the other build order that I do, but you have much more flexibility with this build order, and it is because of that I actually prefer this build order over all other build orders when going for a 2 TC Song Dynasty. So let's take a look and see what it does. Let's see what it do. All right, so we're going to move all of our villagers over onto wood. I messed up a little bit there. We're also going to queue Imperial Official and 2 villagers. Scout, going to do its usual thing, collect all the sheep, and then just do a ring around the base. We're going to be building a mill next to our town center. Imperial Official is going to supervise the mill. Everyone's going to drop off at the mill, and we're going to try and make sure that we kill this sheep over here because we don't want it. We don't want this sheep to be near the town center because otherwise they will drop it off at the town center rather than at the mill. We want them to drop it off at the mill. All right. We're also our next villager, so we've got all of our villagers and a single Imperial Official, and now our next villager is going to go out to the gold mine. We're going to build a house. We're going to build a mining camp. Now, when it comes to positioning your house, it's probably just easiest to do it this way. That way it's less to think about. You can look to put your house out here, but it's a bit more walking distance, a bit more autistic. So yeah, I just avoid it. Make sure you're always killing your sheep early, because if you've got all of your villagers on one single sheep and they run out of food, then they will all do the animation to slaughter or to clock a sheep. So I would just say make sure that you're doing this individually. So now we're rallying up to 8 villagers on food. We've got that 1 villager on gold still. And from here, we're still running circles around our base. We've only found 3 sheep so far, so there should technically be 5 sheep. And at this point, now we're going to be rallying that 2nd villager out to gold. So there you can see there's our 4th sheep and there's our 5th sheep. And look at that, we've been lucky today. We've got a 6th sheep. So we are feeling good about ourselves. And now once we've rallied out to gold, so we've gone, so we started off with 6, and then it went 6-1, and then 8-1, and then 8-2, and now it's going to go out to wood. So 8-2-3. We're going to be putting 3 villagers on wood. So it's a pretty kind of standard opening, but it's a little bit different in the way that it gets there. And the reason why is it's a very, very tight calculated opening. So I don't know exactly who Anomi is, but I wouldn't be surprised to learn that he's got like a PhD in maths, because this build order is crisp. It really relies on getting an early age up. And as a result, it gives you a lot of flexibility as to your defense when it comes to tower attacks or tower rushes, or maybe you want to go for an early barracks or something like that. You've got a lot of flexibility there. So now we're just rallying out over onto wood. Keep in mind, we're dropping off at the mill when we get to 40. Now, I actually just drop it off all the time whenever I'm free. I'm just like, oh, let's do this. Bam. I'll drop off 12 gold. I don't care. Because if you drop off that 12 gold now, it means that maybe later you'll forget about the gold, and then you've got 52 gold in your tax, and then you can only drop off 40, but because you dropped the 12 off earlier, you can drop off all of it, right? It's the little things. It's the little things. So I do that, but yeah. So now we're gonna rally out 3 villagers onto wood, and now we're gonna be rallying all of the rest of our villagers over to food. 3 villagers from food gonna be building the Imperial Academy. You can see we've got a pretty decent spot here. It's not the best spot. Ideally, I'd go 1 tile more further closer over, but I'll take it. It wasn't. Hey, I'm not playing my best. That's all right. All right. Well, the age up's now coming through. Still got 3 villagers here on wood, and now we're gonna rally out everybody over onto food. And for this is all pretty simple, pretty straightforward. All right. So now with the age up about to come through, once we've aged up, we're going to be making sure, so I'll just speed it up so we get to the age up, and there we go. So you can see there's a pretty early age up right here. So we're going to be sending these 3 villagers back to food, and we're also going to be queuing an Imperial Official immediately. And so the reason why we've rushed this up is because now when we drop off anything at the mill, instead of it being 1 tax, it's going to be 2. And it's the same down here. This is all going to be 2 tax. This is going to be 2 tax. We're going to be getting 2 tax from everything here. And with the 2nd Imperial Official, we're actually going to be collecting all of this tax. So we're going to be utilizing this tax. So here you can see we're already up to 62 tax. As I was talking about before, like you just want to try and do that where possible as much as you can. So there's 26 tax. Now, as soon as that Imperial Official comes out, you want to rally it to your mining camp. And as soon as it gets to your, as soon as it goes to your mining camp, you want to move these 2 vills on gold over to wood. And then that's going to give you 5 villages on wood. This is going to give you the wood for your second town center because we're doing 2 TC Song. But keep in mind, we've got added flexibility here. And now, once again, collecting that extra gold. And you can see, had I collected this gold earlier, we'd be able to, we would have the gold to age up. But we don't have the food to age up. So once again, we're going to be using those same 3 villages that we built the Imperial Academy with. And we're going to be building our Barbican. Now, when it comes to building the Barbican, you typically want to build it towards the enemy. But you can also build it on gold mines. That's not a problem. Even if it's in the back, I think that's okay. But normally towards the enemy. So I think at the front of the base is always a good thing. And you can see 442. We do have the resources now to build that Barbican. So there we go. And it's out of range of the Imperial Academy, so always a good thing. So now that we've got our Song Dynasty up, that's going to trigger something in our head, and we're going to say, hey, we need to do something here. What do we need to do? We need to transfer villages to stone, baby. And it is a lot of villages to stone. And you might think, oh, this is a lot of villages. Like, this can't possibly be efficient. I assure you, it is. The math has been run 1,000 times over. It is the best build order by far. And so now we're going to be building that mining camp, supervising the mining camp. So just to give you some quick math, 350 stone is required for a town center. 10 villages collect 100 stone in a single drop-off. Imperial Official buffs that up from 100 stone to 120 stone. That means if you do 3 drop-offs at 120 stone, you have 360 stone. So that is why this math is all like absolutely perfect. We do also put another villager out onto food, or out onto wood. But what we're doing here is we're really just balancing it and making sure that we've got enough resources to maintain villager production. So basically, as long as I'm producing villagers, I'm happy. And then I'm just going to keep rallying to food. So I think 6 on wood is fine here. These 3 villagers are also going to be coming back to food here because Song Dynasty is going to need a bit more food. Now we got a pretty decent spawn here because our stone is far away from our Imperial Academy and our stone is also close to our hunt, which is where we're going to be wanting to expand. So as you can see, we've already done our second drop off. We're at 5 minutes 45 here. And we're just waiting on our final stone to come in. So I think the trigger here is 900. Once you get to 900, you can pull off. And so I do pull off perfectly. It's at 360. And then, so there's the town center going down now at 6 minutes. I think it was a little bit before. So the build, it wasn't the fastest, but it was still pretty clean. Now, the Imperial Official should be moving off this mining camp and should be going to do other things, hopefully, because it's not doing anything here. Now, we don't build town centers as China on resources. We always build them in the open because we want to supervise the resources. Now, you can do it if you want. You're just going to be missing out on tax. You're going to be missing out on that extra 20%, and you're going to be missing out on this Imperial Official just chilling out for the moment. That's all right. That's okay. That's what he likes to do. All right. He's an Imperial Official. So second town center's up now, and we're going to move these first deer closer to the rest of the deer, so that when we drop the mill down, we've got a beautiful little spot. We're just making sure that we kill all of the deer here, and so there's that. And now the Imperial Official, we're going to be supervising both of our food sources. So the big thing about China is food, 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 food. And when you are playing as China, your Imperial Officials are going to be buffing up your the resources that you receive by 20% if you're supervising it. So, you know, we talked a bit earlier about the berries, about the sheep. If you've got 8 sheep, that's 2,000 food. But if you're buffing that up with an Imperial Official the whole time, it's 2,400 food, which means an extra 8 villages from the same amount of sheep. The same goes for deer, which is why it's so important to make sure that your Imperial Official is coming out here before any food actually gets dropped off at this mill. So you can see that we're timing it. These guys have got 13 food in it coming out now. We're going to be rallying out here as well. And do expect a little bit of idle time here. It's very hard to keep up with 3 town centers worth of villager production this early on. But once you get your first drop-off of deer, you should be fine. And that's when you can begin your transitions off food. So you can see the amount of food that's coming in right now. It's absolutely insanity. And just making sure that we kill all of our deer so that they don't get pushed any further away. And so from here, what we can actually begin doing is rallying or just moving these villages off food and over onto wood. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm just going to pull a whole bunch of vills right here. And I'm also going to start adding in additional Imperial Officials now. And this is it. Like, you can see the second town center went down at just under 6 minutes. Probably could have got it earlier. That's okay. But now adding in a stable. And with this build order, you're just going to have so much bloody food. Just simply because of the big expansion that you do. So, you know, normally you might build a town center with like 4 or 5 villages, and then you only move 5 villages to deer. But because we're moving the Imperial Official out here as well, it's like buffing up everything, and there's so many vills. It's just a really, really good, strong build order. Very safe. The opening. I love this build order. So big shout out to Anomi for this one. But that's essentially it. You know, you can kind of choose where you go to from here, whether you want to add stables, whether you want to add archery ranges, Whether you want to go up to the castle age, you know, it's up to you. The ball is in your court. But that's the most efficient way for you to get to TC Song as quickly as possible. Now let's take a look at the water build order. The water build order, it is a little bit different, obviously, because it is involving water. So once again, just against the AI, I don't have time to play against players on the ladder because I don't want to play Altai and Hill and Dale every single game until I get a water map. So we just dive in. So let's pause it quickly. Now, one of the key differences here is that we're not going for an Imperial official as China early on. We will get one in the Dark Age, but we're not going to get it early because the reason why is, well, we don't need it because we don't have any production facilities yet, or we don't have any economic resource facilities. So let's take a look at it. So the build order for the water. We queue up 4 villagers and move every single villager to a straggler tree, and 1 villager is going to go out and begin building a dock. We're going to keep rallying as well these villagers. The first villager is going to go to wood, and our dock goes down. We always try and scout out our shoreline with our scout, just so that we can get a perfect read on where that best fishing spot is, and then that way we can maximize or minimize the distance from that fish to our dock. So we're on the stragglers the whole time. Now this is the timing on this build order is very clean, so you're gonna have to really pay attention to this. So you can see now we just rally 1 villager out to wood, and then we're gonna rally the rest of them to sheep. This villager is gonna stay out on shoreline fish, so you always want to make sure that you don't stomp those shoreline fish. And now with our second one coming through, we've been able to queue up a fishing boat. So with that fishing boat, so this is where I'm just going to quickly pause it. This fishing boat is coming out very early. Typically, if you were to watch like top level players going for early fishing build orders, you might see the first fishing boat out at like 2 minutes and 10 seconds. This is a super duper early fishing boat. And obviously the more villagers you can get the sooner, the better it is, because the more resources you get sooner. Now what we've done here is it's a little bit, I'm almost tempted to just restart just to show you, because it's something that you're going to need to pay very close attention to, and I wouldn't be surprised that you might miss it on the first 1 or 2 games that you play. So I would say go on and practice this. It is the villagers, and we're going to do an early drop-off. So early drop-offs are notoriously bad for efficiency, but because the stragglers are so close, I do think that this is okay to do. So the villagers here, these guys are gathering up the wood. Dock is about to come up. Villagers going to drop off the wood, and we're going to queue up that fishing boat. It's going to cost 75 wood, so we're going to have 25 left over. This guy's going to drop off 10 wood, which leaves us a gap of 15 to fill. So what we're going to do is we're going to click the last villager here. We're going to watch him. As soon as he gets to 3 wood, we're going to grab all of these and drop them off, and that's going to give us 50 wood, a little bit over. And we're going to make a house over here with this villager. And then that's going to mean that this fishing boat, when it comes out, it's only going to be delayed by maybe a second or 2. You can see right there, 1 second, 2 seconds, and it comes out. So it's a very, very clean build order, and it has to be. Because, you know, if you want to really get that early efficiency out from that fishing boat, you need to try and maximize that. All right, well, these guys continuing to chop. We're rallying over to food here and just scouting out around the base. Remember, we only need one sheep in here under the town center because we're not using a lot of villagers for it. So we don't really need to maximize it. And now we do another drop-off, and we get our second fishing boat coming out at 1:35. So not too bad there. And just always training villagers, right? Like that's the key thing here. We always want to make sure that our town center is never idle. We're always making sure that we're creating those villagers. And here we start thinking about expanding out over onto the wood line. So we always want to take our stragglers first, and then we're going to expand out to the wood line once we've got it. But now our third fishing boat's coming in. This is where our economy is starting to feel really good, because with that second fishing boat, it's starting to mean that we can think more about aging up now with that. And now the big thing is going to be adding in that lumber camp. And you can see that we're timing our Imperial official with this as well. So you can do the math on the villagers that we've got. We've got 11, 12 villagers here. So yeah, there's 8 villagers on wood. I guess that's probably the trigger point. But then Imperial official going to come out. You're going to supervise everything over here, which is going to increase our income by 20%. We're going to gather up all of the resources, so make sure you take all of your stragglers here. I think I had 40 wood left on this, so I'm like, you know what, we're just going to take it. Makes sense. All right. So at this point, now that we've got that Imperial official out, we start rallying out to gold, because we're going to need to think about aging up. And of course, the whole time, we've just been making fishing boats, squeezing them in whenever we can. But the mining camp's going to come out now, and we are well and truly on our way to the next age. So we do get up pretty quick with this build order. It's not the quickest. I think the Holy Roman Empire can probably do the fastest, because they like to age up with like 12 villages on the landmark. And look, we could probably do the same thing, but we're not going to. just because, well, we don't need to because we're China, and we can just make our landmarks faster than everybody else. So Imperial Official doing its magic over here. 8 villages on wood, so it's the equivalent right now of like 9.6 vills. So not too bad, nice and early. And we're just maintaining that fishing boat production. That's all we care about. And we're also going to be working towards a village, so we need a little bit more extra wood. But adding in more villages now over to gold, we're going to speed it up a little bit. So we're going to make sure that we collect our tax here once this gets to 40. But you can see that the numbers are going to start lining up for that age up pretty damn well. So all of these build orders, they're very well thought out. They're going to be the most crisp, the best build orders possible that I can give you. And I will just say, like, right now from the get-go, like, I've been doing this for years. I remember when I was like 15 years old giving my dad build orders written down on paper. Like, I would sit there and math them out. Now, I'll be honest, when I was 15 years old giving build orders to my dad, they weren't the prettiest. But look, I've come a long way with my efficiency, but I've always been passionate about getting what I think is the best build order down. And I'm a big fan of this one. So now we see the age up coming through. A lot of villages here on the Imperial Academy. And these 5 villages... they don't need to be on gold because our main focus here is going to be junks. Now, to be honest, we should probably stop making fishing boats here. This would probably best served on additional docks. We want at least 2 docks when we've aged up. But you can see the timing that we've got here. It is pretty damn decent. And that's how you're going to get up with Chinese with 8 fishing boats to the second age at just shy of 5 minutes. So pretty decent timing there. You've got your Imperial Official as well. So your economy is just absolutely pumping. And now your dock is now going to go out to the enemy and drop them off a little bit of a surprise. So we're really focusing here on just our wood production. Wood is so important when you're playing on these water maps. It's everything to you. It's outposts. It's more docks. It's more fishing boats. It's more military vessels. It's more mining camps. It's more houses. It's just like you can never have too much wood. I could have 6,000 wood right now and I could spend it all in 60 seconds. That's how much like wood is important when it comes to this stuff. So pushing out onto the map with a junk, and that's going to essentially be it. Now, when it comes to your wider strategy on water maps, I would just advocate you want junks to start off with, and then you're going to move into hulks, and then eventually you're just going to move into mass junks. When I say hulks, I mean war junks. So you're going to start off with junk, and then you're going to move into war junks, and then you're just going to move into mass junk. So that's the way that you're going to play water. And you want to, if your enemy is aggressive against you, you want to make sure that you pull your fishing boats back to the shoreline fish. Very important to do because you don't want to be losing those fishing ships. But that's essentially it. That's the opening. And so from here, I mean, you guys can play it out. Add more docks, add more boats. Once you do force your enemy off water, then you want to start taking advantage of the fish that's out here, get to the 3rd age, and start making a lot of palace guards. That is typically going to be your playstyle. So that is your water opening. But now we're going to focus on intricacies. So we've already talked about farm placement. We're going to talk about mass villager migration because it's a really important aspect of Chinese play that you will need to observe. So we're going to open up just a standard game. I'm going to put it on high resources and we're going to allow cheats. Just so that I can talk through what you would typically see and what you would see with the Chinese. Now, I normally compare the Chinese to the French because the French are probably the easiest civilization, whereas the Chinese are by far the hardest. So, let's put our cheat on. We're going to get a whole bunch of villagers out. Now, I don't know if this affects the enemy as well. Doesn't look like it does. Cool, so I'm the only one that's got that cheat on. Okay, so what you might normally see with like a French player is 5 villagers out on this hunt. And you know what? And an outpost, right? Like 5 villagers and an outpost. And then 5 villagers on this. And then, they will very happily expand with just like 5 villagers here, 5 villagers there. And it's typically 5 villagers because that's how many you can fit in an outpost, right? So, you might come out here. It's a bigger berry patch, so maybe you go 10 out there. And then that is going to give you, like maybe you want to drop down 2 outposts out here. Like that's very common for the French, the way that they play. And they do try and take control of the map in that manner. But as China, you're not going to do that. And the reason why is because of the Imperial Official. You need to be mass migrating your villagers all together at the same time. Now, I say all your villagers. I don't really mean all your villagers. So we're just going to restart just so I can demonstrate again. So the way this is going to work is that you're going to take advantage of the extra 20% resources that your Imperial Official can give. And because of that, you need to make sure that all of your villages are moving around together. So as an example, we were talking about the expansion that we did earlier with the town center. And one of the things that I noted was that a lot of villagers were going out to build the town center and then being moved over to the hunt. And that's a good thing because it means that the imperial official can come out there and supervise that, because you don't want to be supervising like 3 villages, right? You want to be supervising as many as possible. You want to be 20% of 3 villages is 3.6, whereas 20% of 30 villages is 36. So you want to try and maximize the efficiency that the bonus that your imperial official is giving you. So you'll come out here. Now we're going to turn off in a jiffy. I just want to... it might be tough to get that. Oh, that guy's going to... Alright. So we're going to come out here and we're going to bring all of our villagers, okay? And the thing that we're going to do is, once we've exhausted all of these, we're not... Or I should say, before we've exhausted all of these, we're not going to split any of these villas off. In fact, we're going to keep rallying this entire time. We're going to rally our villagers to this same deer patch. And the reason why is because we've got the imperial official. Let's say we go and take these 4 villages here. We drop them off and we go take that, because you might think that's a good idea, right? And then you might go do the same over there, like, oh, that's fine. It's nice and safe. It's close to my town center. Well, guess what? Now they're collecting resources and they're not getting the extra 20%, which means that your food is not lasting as long. Because remember, right now, okay, let's count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times 250 is 2,000. Add an extra 20% on top of that, that's 2,400. If you were to gather all of these resources here without an imperial official, you would be missing out on 400 food. That's a lot of food. So don't do it. Instead, what you want to do is make sure that your villagers are all gathering from the same mill. Now, there will be times where your berries and your deer spawn close to each other on an expansion. Let's see if we can find one right here. We can't really, but like there's some berries there and there's a gold vein. And in that case, that's absolutely fine if you want to take the berries and the deer at the same time. You can see here we've got a little bit of a funny bug that happens. This happens all the time. I don't actually know how to stop this. But these guys are dropping off at the town center, even though the mill is closer. So you can see there's the mill right there compared to the town center. And yet still, they go for the town center. It happens quite a lot. Normally, it's when they're very close to the mill, not when they're this far away from the mill. See, look at that. So you do have to be very careful with your villagers. So I don't know if any devs are watching this, but if so, can you please log that? Because that is annoying, and it happens all the time. There you go. There it happens again. So I don't know what it is that's triggering this, but anyway. That is my main advice. It's mass villager migration. So what that looks like in a more tangible sense. So if we just do in a jiffy on, just so that we can gather up all of these guys as quickly as possible. So once we've finished gathering all of this, so you might get into this stage where you've got a single deer carcass left. So what you're going to do is you're going to take all of your villagers, and by this time you've probably got like a whole bunch more. So you're going to take all of your villagers, you're going to go build a mill over on the berries. So you're going to make sure that you cash in, and then you're going to go build that mill. You're going to go supervise, and you're going to leave one single villager here on that deer carcass. That's all you're going to do, just a single villager. That way, yeah, you're missing out on that 20% of the food, but you're not missing out on that added bonus that you're getting from here. And then you're just going to make sure that you do this. And then that way, you know, from here, then you're going to be expanding out over onto this one. And you're just going to be taking these guys with you everywhere that you go. And of course, you know, when it comes to the walking time, it doesn't look good, but it's about delaying your farm transition as long as possible. And this is how you maximize that. So that's a significant intricacy I would suggest that you don't overlook as China. You really want to maximize that and make sure that you're getting the full bonus that you can from it. Other than that, I don't think there's too much more to talk about when it comes to the intricacies of China, or when it comes to the guide. If I've missed anything, let me know. I can always do a follow-up video. I'm passionate about China. It's great to see that China are now on top of the ladder, of the rank ladder, on the top of everything right now. So it's great stuff. And yeah, I'm excited to hit the rank ladder and to smash out some games. If you want to see some gameplay, let me know as well in the comments, because obviously this has been a channel focused on casted games. If you want to see gameplay, let me know. I'll get some of that for you as well. All right, well, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.